Hey, this is Alex Head, founder of Subtext Radio.
This is Subtext.
Please go ahead and click the like button and the subscribe button. It really helps us to reach new audiences and promote the artists that we work with. Hit like and hit subscribe.
Hi, this is Nathan Gray. Welcome to Subtext Radio. Uncertainty reigns, indeterminacy abounds. As an international project in a time of crisis, we sense the increasing unevenness of our terrain. During the varied conditions of the second wave, radio remains a space for collective experience, and our program attempts to reassert this collectivity through song, poetry, technology, travelogue, and dialogue.
We're live a week ago in our sort of strange on-air online studio, but we wanted to greet you folks and just kind of talk a little about some of the shows we're going to do today.
I'm broadcasting to you live from hotel quarantine in Perth. I haven't left this room in 8 days, and I won't leave for another 6. I hope you enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Annabelle, and I'm in Paris. I'm also in lockdown, but I do leave my room, and I'm really excited to be with you today. So much to look forward to with this program.
This is Alex Head from Berlin. We're going into Off-Air Gems, which regular listeners will know is a dynamic dialogic process between myself, Alex Head, and Shanti Suki Osman. Enough already from us. Let's jump into the program, and we'll see you and catch up with you later in the day. I need headphones. 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 Oh, there you are. Yeah, all right. There's your hand, anyway. Oh, I'm sorry. There's no video. I can't. I can't hear you. I can't hear what you're saying. Fucking say. I still can't hear what you're saying. Oh. You got your mic off, love. Oh, there you are. It's me. It's good. I can hear. I've got you. Yes. Oh, you can't hear me? Oh. There we go. Yeah, you can. Wait, now. Yeah! Yeah. I've got the mic on. Let's do a snap. Let's do a clap together, and then we've got that sweet clap. Well, it's a pretty thin line at this point, but yeah. Okay, we have to, let's clap at least. I wonder how accurate this method is sometimes, but let's do it anyway. Okay. What's Yeah, I'll take that with me into my future career as a mentor. No, I've never done any teaching, but I think I would be. I'm getting ready for it. I hope, anyway.
Recording is on. I shouldn't cackle too loud. Okay.
Okay, so serious face. I mean, not that anyone can see us, but unserious face. All right. 1, 2, 3. I don't know if that was synchronized, but it doesn't matter.
Don't matter.
All that matters is we've taken the time to record another, let's face it, mind-blowing episode of
Gems.
Gems, mate.
I wonder if our trusted and like dedicated listeners can tell how giggly and hyperactive we are, and if they're making their own decisions as to why, like, it's cold outside and it's the end of the year.
Yeah.
And it's just
that question of whether they're tuning out or not. But don't tune out. This is a good one. We both strongly feel that this is going to be a good episode because, not least because, we've been winding each other up for about 20 minutes on the phone. So
I know.
So we're kind of,
Gems. I know.
That was actually, on it. Now we're kind of switched. That was the meta phase, but we're going to bring that in next year as a new show called, what was it called? Something to do with regrets. I think. Oh no, don't mention that.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
This reminds me of those times where I've like been in panel discussions and listened to people, and then the artists on the stage or the kind of like researchers on the stage, like, like that conversation we had the other day in the coffee shop, and we're doing exactly that, which is really obnoxious. So let's wind that down.
That's true. That's the worst type of self-congratulating nonsense.
We don't no self-congratulation here.
Yeah. Okay. So
can I say?
So let's suffer a little. What would you like to say?
I was going to say, have you got a bit of paper like on the desk that's moving around a bit?
Oh, is it making that noise?
Because I can hear a rustling. I mean, I like it, but I'm just thinking we've already lost half our listeners like in the first 2 minutes, so we could lose another half, and we'll be left with a quarter.
It could just be my epiglottis. I have a really strange. I have like bronchial things.
Oh,
but
okay.
Now
I feel bad for mentioning it.
Let me just try and rustle the paper into a stack that doesn't move. Anyhow, it's lovely to see you again, dear.
Yeah.
And we've made the best of this terrible year, haven't we? In terms of getting down to business, getting down to subjects.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to go somehow.
Yeah, and I feel like it's been a terrible year, but I have a feeling that we're in a group of people that have not had it the worst, even though we have had it worse, but we're doing okay. We're able to smile, so that's good. Should we crack on with the topics?
Totally.
Okay. You say one first.
Well, I don't want to start with that one. So let's start with culture.
Oh yeah, let me go first on this one. So, culture, obviously a very broad thing. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about it today, as with a lot of the words that we bring up in this show, it's terms and things that we've come across with our reading and our work and whatever. And I guess that's the idea. It's kind of like a radio show reading group almost, kind of. Anyway, culture. So I've been reading a lot about music pedagogy theory in a German-speaking context. So you didn't know it was going to go here, did you? And a lot of it is really frustrating. And I think when people try to like talk about why certain methods should be used in music education, and what it means to use popular music, and what it means to use hip hop, what it means to use hip hop in a class full of German Turkish kids, what it means to use this and that, and like what counts as the norm. We've talked about stuff like this before, like what is the norm, what is other than the norm. And I came across this one person who was writing. Oh, do you think I should say the person? Maybe, yeah, I'll just say, I don't care. Anyway, there's this one person called Dorothea Bart who's quite interesting and writes about, as far as I've understood it, writes about this idea of like one way of like defining culture in a music pedagogy, in a music kind of forget the music pedagogy thing. See, like one way of defining culture is this idea of having a shared way of interpreting meaning, like a shared way of interpreting meaning. And I thought that was really interesting, because then it went on to saying, okay, and so culture is then, it's not based on ethnicity, it's not based on like social background, it's not based on age, it's not based on where you're born, but it's based on this idea of a shared knowledge and a shared means of interpretation. Now, I find that really fascinating because it's in German, it's the word geteilt, right? Geteilte Sinndeutung and geteiltes Wissen. And recently with another friend, we were talking about this word geteilt because she's been using it in a title for one of her sound pieces, because it's got this like double meaning. Like teilen means to share, but it also means to separate. And I was trying to think, I don't think there's an English language word that is like that actually. But I was thinking of to halve something, but that's not quite right. But anyway, so when I was discussing it, I was discussing this idea of like, okay, this is one suggestion that culture is a culture is defined by, or let's just say your belonging to a culture is defined by whether you share the knowledge or share the means of interpretation of the as the other people within that so-called culture. So radio culture, whatever, I'm giving silly examples now, like a radio culture is defined by the fact that you and I might have shared knowledge about something. I don't know, like I'm just trying to get my head around what that means, because one of my students, actually German native speaker student in a German university context reading a German text, did actually interpret it as separated knowledge, and I thought that was fascinating. So I wanted to just bring in those ideas. I knew you'd like this, you've gone serious face now. Like I wanted to bring in those ideas of like a shared means of interpretation, which then means a shared means of making meaning, right? Shared knowledge. And if that then means it's we belong to if that then is a way to denote culture, there you go. That's my input first. Oh no, sorry. Oh no, wait, because I gave the input without giving my own thoughts, because I was a bit like my first instinct was to be like, that cannot be. How can that be? Because how do we define the knowledge? And then we're back to this epistemological stuff, you know, like who defines what this knowledge is, and is it the way to sharing it that needs to be the same, or is the goal knowing the same knowledge that needs to be the same? There you go.
Good, really, really good questions. Oh, good questions. I think that, well, just because we have had little time to think about these things before, what I had immediately thought about was the relationship between culture and power, and sort of culture being coextensive with power. And that's something that I've been particularly looking at this year, almost this whole year, with regards to a particular cultural symbol. But to go back to what you were saying a little bit, what I've also been obliged to recognize is, or like question, is what knowledge is and how knowledge is described, and how do we talk about this thing. Because like you say, like in the last show we talked about epistemological racism and stuff, and so there's like a lot to be done in terms of working out how knowledge is created and what counts and what doesn't. I mean, the idea of how we formulate a true statement in the sort of 21st century is anyway just a fascinating topic. But the thing that came back, the base level description of knowledge, which I'm comfortable with, is that it's to do with patterns, basically, and that anything that is going to make a claim of being knowledge must first be sort of imprinted into the historical record, and there has to be a sort of a pattern in order for it to be qualified to do that, which does not necessarily follow then that just because you find a pattern you have got the knowledge. And the knowledge, of course, is a whole kind of like interpretive, like you say, like a kind of interpretive mode, sort of sense-making activity. And then I was looking at so I've been studying this idea of cultural evolution for a bit, because I think that when you throw different disciplines against one another, they produce kind of interesting insights into things like power and its relationship to culture. And what I've sort of been looking at is this kind of sacred palm tree, which I won't go into like tons and tons of detail about, because I'll just ruin the publication of my book next year. But there's a lot to be said for the kind of like hyper-local definition of culture, definitely. Culture as the thing that defines the way in which we do things in this particular place, in this particular time. But then culture is also a sort of a reflex. And unfortunately, it doesn't either seem to follow that just because culture is coextensive with power, understanding the way in which culture expresses power necessarily allows you to change or question or challenge or really fight against that power. It doesn't seem to work that way. No.
Wow. Yeah. No. That was that took it somewhere, didn't it? I guess for me though, it still comes back to this like almost like stiff notion or this question of like, okay, does this shared understanding of the patterns or does the shared acknowledgement of the patterns mean a shared culture then? I mean, I guess that we don't have to answer it necessarily. I mean, I guess that's just the rhetorical thing I would put on top of that. And that's what fascinated me about reading this recently. I was just a bit like, okay, I was even thinking more simply like, okay, like, can we even like be sure that it's a shared interpretation of something? Like, I find that actually really difficult to even take as a given. So. Yeah, I think it is difficult. It's very difficult to have solid ground in the cultural field, but maybe that's why it's exciting as well. Yeah. Maybe that's what makes it real. Okay. Well, I know that was a big one. Now I'm going to carry on talking about that. No, it's okay.
It's nice because it's like the second person that I've spoken with culture about this week, and then you start thinking like, God, there's all this talking about this culture, and then you remember like, oh yeah, we're all trained or like have got a background in art and live in Berlin, and sort of that's kind of what we celebrate most of the time, even if we spend a lot of our time doing other things. Yeah, thank you for that. So why don't we talk about... Which one do you want to talk about next?
Gossip.
Gossip. I was going to go for gossip too.
I mean, I know that officially this is the one that you added to the list, but it is an idea I would have had as well. I just want to say that. Go on.
I mean, I've heard that. I heard that that's an idea.
Have you heard it through the grapevine? You've heard through conversations that it's an idea?
Yeah, exactly. Someone mentioned to someone else last week that it was the sort of idea that you might have had.
At some point.
And that maybe... Right.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's it. I'm done. You'll go. Yeah, gossip is one of those things that's... it's sort of everywhere and nowhere, isn't it? So, I mean, everything can be gossip until proven otherwise. Maybe that's how the laws were, the scientific laws even were established as rumours. Apparently rumours, like, so this guy Yuval Harari, someone told me, he has this theory about abstract thought, and that basically without rumours, and then in that sense, I guess without gossip, we would never have developed into like a abstract reasoning creature.
Oh wow!
That's what I heard, anyway.
That's what you heard.
That's what I heard.
We're doing like method, form, style, mixing it all up. Well, listen, for me, for gossip, like quite concretely, I see gossip as a very like feminist technology, actually. And this is something I've even spoken about with other feminist friends and artists, and I just think it's vital. I don't know. I don't know. I find like I know a lot of people who use the term gossip just to say communicate, and a lot of people who use the term gossip to just be like telling people stuff like off air, you know, like telling people stuff. Oh, by the way, is this person, this person, this person? By the way, you should know before you enter into this. You should know X, Y, Z. And I found myself literally like 2 days ago writing to a friend saying, I might be doing this. These are the conditions. Do you have any background knowledge on it before I go into it? Just to let me know like what the deal is. So I really rely on gossip as a structural, like a feminist. I said technology. I don't know if that's the right word. I guess technology, because it's a work. It's a Werkzeug, it's a tool, like it's a feminist tool, is gossip. Like I rely on it, really. And it's about connectivity and all this stuff. But yeah, that's my take on that. I mean, yeah, what you said also But this is kind of my take on it.
Yeah, that's much more kind of real, isn't it? It's much more sort of... I mean, yeah, gossip is one of those things that, you know, it's just a question of the parameters. It's a little bit like knowledge, isn't it? I mean, like, is knowledge just sort of gossip without enough patterns? I don't know.
Oh wow, hey, Christmas edition or like winter celebration edition. We have to link all the topics together, like concretely.
Oh,
no.
Okay, we'll do that. Let's do that for like January.
Yeah, let's do that for January.
Okay. Oh no.
No, I just want to. I just want to repeat what you said. Gossip. What did you say? Gossip is knowledge without recognised patterns.
Without enough patterns.
I don't know.
And that. Well, then let's, as a way of maybe going with that as a thought experiment, maybe we should go into our next subject, which I would like to offer up as Dr. COVID. Because you see what I'm doing here? There's a segue. There's a pretty
good segue. Yeah, go on. It's right. This is a loose edition. I still had something to say on gossip actually, but
then
no.
By all means,
I'll bring it.
I mean, it's a slider. It's just a slider. It's not like strictly. It never is, anyway. Is it?
Do you know what though? I'll say it as a final thought question. Like this idea of what you said about gossip and knowledge and like patterns, and then linking that back to like this idea of. No, you know what? Let's cut this bit because I want to keep it for the next show. Go to COVID. Go to Dr. COVID.
We don't do cuts, Shanti.
Exactly. So we'll keep this as a teaser for the next show.
Okay. Okay, good. So tune in next year for some hot gossip, which is going to be by that point fucking on the boil for some weeks before y'all get to hear it. I haven't heard it either, so that's fair, isn't it? Equal access to the information. So listen, Dr. COVID, it's got to be discussed. A lot of people are discussing it. The main reason I wanted to discuss it in the first place was because of my doctor. His name is not Dr. COVID. That would be incredibly unfortunate, wouldn't it? And it's like, this is the point where I sort of laugh, and then also like it's tongue in cheek because this is a fucked up pandemic. But my doctor, who I was visiting maybe a month ago about, God, I can't remember what it was anymore. Something to do with my knees, probably. I like talking about my knees. That's going to come up a lot this week. He was sort of having a pretty long conversation with me about my life in England, which is some time ago now and not particularly relevant to anything. And then he was talking to me about climate change, and then he was talking to me about the US election, and I was like, you know, it's an hour later than my appointment on the regular in this place. So maybe why maybe this is why, because you have a 10-minute conversation with everyone about. But then he sort of brought in, so everything's okay now because we have a vaccine. And I was like, huh? And it sort of struck me as a little bit weird, like we weren't talking about it really, and it was literally the day after the first one had been sort of, you know, semi-approved even. So it was a month ago, so it wasn't even like it was coming out or anything. Struck me as a little bit weird. And I went on to have a series of conversations with friends and family, actually. And I'm not going to take a position within one of these stances because I don't feel like it's responsible to do that at this point. But what I wanted to do is maybe just highlight some of the positions that I've heard about the pandemic at this point, and then people can do their own research and sort of mull it over themselves. So there's like this brilliant woman, I can't remember her name, She was on TikTok in the middle of the summer, and she did a hierarchy of conspiracy theories. She was like supposed to be doing some paper for university in the States, and she said, I just got bored as fuck, and I realized no one had done it, so I did a hierarchy of conspiracy theories. And at the bottom was like big tobacco, because obviously they were caught like faking science to get cigarettes, you know, unregulated for many, many years. And at the top of it is kind of like, you know, Bill Gates wants us to inject you with a microchip. And they get sufficiently more dangerous and more aggressive and more threatening to people as they go further up this pyramid. So with the whole COVID thing, obviously there have been a number of people that have highlighted kind of inconsistencies between security measures and annual like cases of flu pandemics, which happen every year. And then you could kind of almost put a different theory for the pandemic into each one of these tiers of conspiracy theory, where like, so again, I'm not going to take a position, but like within the top of that, maybe this is taking a position, but for me, there are so many different ways in which you could cut this thing, which are some of them very, very offensive and some of them very ridiculous. But as someone said this week, like on the basic level, the one thing which people maybe have to recognize is that, if you can have offices full of people working together, why can't you have 5 people sitting down having dinner together? So it's sort of tricky, isn't it? But I do feel that there have been a number of people that have highlighted bits of information that have been really completely ignored, which are quite significant, really, because the amount of restraints which we have feels like kind of overkill by some perspectives, considering that this time of year there's normally this amount of people die from flu anyway. And like I said, I don't not take it seriously. Obviously, this is a disease that kills people, but I just wanted to put that out there because I'm sort of droning on a bit. But oh no, you've got. Because I think it's important to look at that relationship between gossip and knowledge as one of insufficient or sufficient patterns, and like. People should look at that and think what all that collection of data means for them before assuming that the state is like this benevolent thing that doesn't want to use all of its surveillance technology to follow people around. Of course it does. It's like basically the state's job. So I just wanted to say, Dr. Mike Yeadon, Yeadon, he's worth a look. Over to you.
Okay, we're gonna cut here because I need to change batteries. So, thanks for bringing up COVID. I think what you said is all very, very interesting, but I'm also just going to quickly give my view on it. As you were talking about it, I thought it was so funny because if you just remember like how euphoric and laughy and giggly we were at the beginning of this conversation, and about 3 hours ago, I was chatting with my friend about how like I'm not going to go home and visit my mum for Christmas, and I just started bawling my eyes out. So it's just, and it suddenly just became really clear to me like why I'm such in a giggly mood at the moment, because it's just like trying to, I don't know, whatever. I think just to kind of like talk about what you just said with the lens of this like knowledge and gossip thing, and to just relate it to conversations I have been having with my mother. It's like no one knows shit, actually, like in a way, like no one knows. And then sometimes I think, is it that no one knows anything, or is it that just no one believes anything, or no one knows what to believe? Like I'm saying a very basic version of what you just said. Yeah. Like if I'm just going to use this anecdote of like deciding whether to go back to the UK for Christmas, like I was chatting with my mum. And, we're both unsure. We both don't know. We're both scared, but we both don't know how to articulate it. And so I decided, or we decided, or it was decided, right? No, also nobody wants to take responsibility for the decision, right? That I wasn't going to go and visit. And that's just brought up like so much, like neither of us, like we have a great relationship, but neither of us want to take ownership for deciding not to see each other at Christmas, because it's surrounded in like so much like pain. And as soon as you take a decision, it means subscribing to a view, like what you just said. Like as soon as you make a decision, like I'm not going to fly because it is dangerous, then it's like it somehow ignores all these other like intersections of like I want to see my mother because it makes me happy. Like it kind of ignores that narrative. So I guess that's my kind of trying to like focalize my response by using an anecdote as usual, but it's meant that I'm just ignoring a lot of stuff, because like I feel like I can't get wrapped up in all of that gossip is knowledge is gossip, because I read something this morning which was like the NHS have been told not to give the vaccine to people with allergies.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, so there is no vaccine then, you know, like then it's like, you know, and it's just yeah. So I guess I'm glad you brought it up, and it's just really like, it was a bit of a grounder, like it was a grounding topic, even though it's so absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's much time and work to be done, but I actually had sort of been in this very privileged space, although, you know, I was not untouched by the pandemic, despite not being near it, if you like, physically. But I didn't really have to think about it in a serious way, and it's like that sort of cliche of like the inconvenient truth or something. I mean, I don't think there is a particular truth around something which is only 1 year in, but I do think that. But I do think it needs to be proportionate, and I do think that we need to keep an eye on civil liberties within all of this mess. So yeah, I mean, so it's like truth is contextual. So yeah, I understand that as well. I don't have the truth; I just have a truth, and I don't even have one of those really at this point. So, but yeah, I just felt that that there are a series of positions which ought to be investigated seriously is my sort of current status. It's not that I necessarily have. I don't think that I'm going to be sitting around the Christmas table sort of saying like, well, it's all Bill Gates. But it was interesting that it was my mum who first sent me this guy, Mike Yeaton, and she was like, well, you know, what about this? And I was just like, oh, all right. I mean, that's not kind of her kind of style at all. Anyway.
But if I may, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because it's exactly what you said. As soon as you start talking about it, your opinion just inevitably comes through. Like you saw my reaction to that. It was like, well, you know, if there's a vaccine that, you see, even now, like we're gonna, you know, like if there's a vaccine that people with allergies can't take, then is it a vaccine then? Who is it for, you know? And then we're back to this like access thing again. But again, I'm not a scientist and I don't want anyone to get sick. So it's a bit like, I don't know. I wonder if we should leave this one now before we get into. But you're totally right, though. It's really, again, just referring back to this anecdote with my mum. No, neither of us want to take responsibility for the decision that I'm not flying to the UK for Christmas. But at the same time, like, as soon as I say I'm not coming because I don't want to carry an infection, it suddenly then becomes exactly what you said. Oh, but you know, people in an office, people in a restaurant, people in a hangy, and it becomes it becomes muddled. And I think it's a really interesting experiment of like all these different layers of reality as well. Oh gosh, now we're going there. No,
but that's exactly it, because I think it's like, you know, I was like, we're all witches now, you know? We're all unreliable narrators.
Oh, that's good.
We all have our own interpretation. And we've been, you know, and that's sort of actually always the case. It's just that now the state kind of has to acknowledge that there are so many different ways in which this virus is dangerous in so many different contexts for so many different people. And so obviously, in a way, the first reaction of the state is to make a blanket measure for everyone, even though it's the opposite of the reality from the state's point of view. Just because I've been reading tons of Arendt this week, it's like, from the state's point of view, it's actually really logical to have a blanket solution for a problem which is not a blanket problem. That's actually the way the state works, because it has to reduce the amount of energy and time and everything that it has to put into something like this. So that's fine. I think that's a normal reflex. But I think that also says something for the paradigm that we're going into with the Anthropocene and the fact that the, you know, as Haraway says, like Gaia is intruding upon us. Like we have to deal with the material realities of living in the world that we're in. You know, we've isolated ourselves, we've used technology and medicine and everything as much as we can, but it's not going to work for the next 100 years. Like the Earth is going to shrug its shoulders and there'll be lots of everything, blah, 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 climate catastrophe. But it's sort of the beginning of that, of people being like, oh, fuck, like this is my uncanny valley. Like my uncanny valley is where I have to question that, you know, how little I know and how little I really understand about this stuff. That's almost as problematic as the virus itself, I think, in a sense. Although,
oh my
like,
God.
you know,
Yeah, no, that's loads.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
Anyhow.
yeah, I'm not a doctor, so I'm just like... No, I love it. You've been reading a lot, haven't you, since we last spoke?
It's my job at the moment.
I know.
It's my unpaid job.
It should be my job, putting me to shame.
Well,
do we have time to talk about anything else?
We do put. Well, I don't know actually, because we were going to talk a little bit about the radio fourth wall, but I mean, do you want to talk about that? We could just throw a few words together about it.
What?
If you like.
It was on your.
It's my list or my side.
It was one of your suggestions. The radio fourth wall.
Yeah. Shall I just?
Yeah. Well, when I think of when you said fourth wall, I just thought of when I did my A-level in theatre studies and Stanislavski.
Yeah.
And like speaking through the fourth wall, and then how like
yeah.
And then you've got Brecht. Brecht, who was like, no, communicate with the fourth wall, make it like a boxing ring and all this stuff, and make it a parody, make it a caricature, and give direct address to the audience and all this to kind of like show that it's reality. And I think my knowledge, not my knowledge of it, but my thinking of it stopped at the age of 18. So I'm just kind of like harkening back a couple of decades to see what's there. But I mean, I guess the radio fourth wall, I've not really thought about it. I think it's because I just talk so much anyway that I'm just like, whatever. So there you go, that's me. I threw in a couple of names.
Well, that's a pretty consistent breaking down of the radio fourth. I think I've never read anything about the fourth wall, but it suddenly occurred to me the other day that there's a lot of stuff that's pre-recorded in today's broadcast, and I was wondering about whether or not one should it's always that question in radio, isn't it, and a lot of things, whether you should use that magic word live, because we are like the most live, like we are very live, right? Like this is live, we're having an actual dialogue, it's unedited pretty much, but when it goes out live, it's another thing. So I wondered if there was a point maybe in bringing that up. And also that it's pretty much impossible to do anything live in lockdown. I mean... we can't have people round.
We can't have people round, but listen, for
good reasons, but
Yeah, no, sorry. It's just that I have so much to say about this topic that I was tricked into thinking it was something else. Because to me, I think this is fascinating. Maybe this is also a to be continued. But this idea of whether to do something live or not, this idea of what happens to something once it's recorded, and even if it's recorded live, what then happens to it. To me, this is about listening and recording. This is about listening and recording. And so then it's like, my mind is blown now about where to start with this. So I think that just because, it's about listening and it's about recording and it's about, what happens, like okay, let's talk about what we're in. We're recording this conversation, but we know it's being recorded to be then played, right? So we're also performing this conversation as well. And I think that's something to take into consideration when recording stuff. And I think that, oh God, I want to start talking about Ultra Red, but I'm worried I'm not going to quote it correctly. But they do a lot of stuff about like what it means to record something and then to listen back to the recording, and the thing that's created when something's recording that's between the recording and the live event. Oh yeah, no, I need to read something up for the next show. But I think that to me is what this conversation is about. And I'm not sure if it's about the fourth wall, about the radio fourth wall, because to me this means this in this very traditional, almost scholastic sense that I'm aware of, and it's very narrow, is that this fourth wall is this, is it direct address or is it not direct address? Or is it indirect address? Are we addressing the audience, the listeners, right? But then also for me now, 20 years on since I first heard the term, I think if something is done in a performative way, I would, on the one hand, argue that you're always addressing the audience or the listeners or the other people that are there. So right now we are addressing, even though it's the two of us chatting, and funnily enough, even in the conversation we had, like the phone call we had before this, just to kind of chit chat, we already were performing, because we were just like, oh, actually, no, we should be recording this, because like that's part of that is because that's kind of like the only time we talk. But to me, your explanation of what you wanted to say or what you thought about with the fourth wall really makes me think about the role of the listener in creating meaning from what has been recorded, and like what it means, like what it means to like press record, and what that does to the person speaking, and what it does to the stuff being recorded. And like this idea of like authenticity, which I hate that word. Delete that word. Like this idea of like archiving something, and going back and listening to. I know I'm looking at the time. Going back and listening to a recording and trying to create and trying to make meaning of it. Yeah. So like listening to a recording in a kind of way, and then like looking at the patterns. So we're back to like knowledge and all this shit. So to me, there's a lot here to unpack actually. So we could return to it.
Yeah, I think maybe, I think you're right. And I think maybe one last thing that we take on with us is, you could, because it's not about the fourth wall, you're right. It's maybe more about something like along the lines of like surveillance culture, where we're sort of semi-performative so often.
Interesting.
Like it's so normalized that we're performative, just even the fact that we have 2 ticks on WhatsApp to say whether you've read a message or not is you're performing. You're constantly involved in a process of being represented.
It's so funny you say that. Like, I'm not joking. I was actually thinking of trying to put that particular thing into a topic for today, because I was also thinking about that. This idea of like, are you ignoring a message, or are you acknowledging? It's like, I'm not ignoring you, I'm just actively not responding, and what that means. And it's interesting that you bring that up. I've written down 3 topics for next time that we're going to do.
Okay, good. That's good. Well, wow. I think that's us. Shit. There isn't actually really a time limit on this, but I guess I have to go and pick up fucking vegetables. There's always something, isn't there?
Is it too good to go? Is that what you're doing?
It's a solar thingy. It's a farm. Oh, right. It's like a farm where you help and stuff. What an articulate way to finish the show.
Do you know what? I've got a feeling. Once again, thank you for taking on the editing. You know what? Next time we're gonna do a.
Ablov.
No, I've got my topics for next time, and they're all going to be to do with what we're doing. It's going to be like a meta.
I like that.
But shall we just end by both singing off-air gems together, and then I'm going to send you these files. You might need to cut a few bits out of this one, but actually it's kind of funny as it is. Okay, so 1, 2, 3 off-air gems, okay?
Okay.
1 off-air gems. That's a lot of claps.
Self-clap.
All
right, great. I'm cutting.
Clap.
Confusing, but it seems like it.
This is subtext.